Well, welcome to this edition of Rainer on Leadership. Hey, you YouTubers, subscribe. We're incrementally growing our YouTube channel. We want to grow it more. We want to be present there. Do us a favor, subscribe, like us, tell others about us. Just get the word out that Rainer on Leadership and our other podcasts, Church Answers podcast, we're both there at the Church Answers channel. So join us and make some comments. We'd love to hear from you. Every now and then I go check, and if I'm checking, I see you there and you're not being really ugly, I will respond to you. So thank you. And always, you who are on our podcasting app, you know what we ask of you. Give us a rating and review. Why? Because if you give us a rating and review, others hear about us and we get this free ministry out to others. But there's another reason we get this free ministry out is because we have sponsors who pay the bills. And our sponsor today is one for which I have great excitement, and it is called My Church Staff. A simple concept from your perspective, church's perspective. We help you find a person, or that person may already be in the church, already be on staff, and we help that, not help them, we train them, we prepare them, and every month we coach them and give them resources so that they can be a volunteer or maybe a part-time paid person on your staff, whatever the case may be. And right now, My Church Staff has two positions. One of those positions is stewardship. That has been the fastest growing position because people want someone in their church that can help them get more generous funding for the ministries of the church. That one's been growing rapidly. Another good one we have is music and worship. Stewardship, Art Rayner, music and worship, Mike Harlan. And not too long from now, Danny Frank will be going, I mean, not too long, I'm just talking about days. He'll be opening the channel that is about hospitality, welcome, greater ministry, all of that part when people come to your facility through the front door. So thank you, My Church Staff. You can see the link in the show notes. If you're on YouTube and you need to go there, just go to churchanswers.com. There's a tab called My Church Staff. This is a heartwarming podcast. Sam did the content for this, but it reminds me of content that I wrote a long time ago called Eating the Elephant. And I think that there's still some application from that book, but particularly what Sam has said in this particular content. So Sam, you are one of the best I've seen at making change in an older church. Mm-hmm. And you have done more experientially than I've ever done in that area. And you have stayed with the church. You getting close to a decade now?
I'm in my 10th year, yes.
That's amazing. And I've watched the change in the church, and incredible numerical change in ethnicity and the representation of the nations that are there, the overall health of the church, just the spirit, the unity. There's no such thing as a perfect church, but when I go to West Bradenton, I am in a great church. And that change came in an older church founded in 1960.
1954, technically.
Okay, 1954. So it's 1 year older than your dad. So we know it's a really old church. So talk to us about this and lead us through this whole process.
Well, when I got to West Bradenton, it was an older church, but it had a strong core. And it had people who were willing to make the changes that were necessary. They didn't come without pain, and it didn't come without losing people, because even when people say they're ready for change, they don't always know what that means. So it wasn't easy, but I did have a lot of support. And so I realized that there are pastors who are listening to this who know what needs to happen and probably have a pretty good grasp on the situation, but are in a position of just trying to convince people that change is even necessary. West Bradenton knew that change was necessary, and that's part of the reason they brought me on, was to make those changes. So I do feel blessed that I had all along the way, while there were some ups and downs and some trials and not everyone agreeing with things, I did have a lot of support along the way. So we've gone from being an older church to a church that has, it's about 30% of the church, 35% of the church is 18 and under.
That's incredible.
So we have a lot of kiddos, and it makes for a lively, fun, and a very dirty church facility. So we love the change, though. We love where we are right now. We still have a long way to go, but I do want to talk about what that looks like. And you can make change in an older church without running over the old guard. And by the way, when we say old guard, sometimes that has some negative connotation. Sometimes the old guard is good. Sometimes the old guard is what's keeping the church alive.
Mm-hmm.
So just because they're old guard doesn't necessarily mean they need to go. You may actually end up at a church where maybe they're a bit stubborn and a bit stuck in their ways, but generally speaking, good people. And if that's the case, then you can work with them. Change doesn't happen on the timeline that most leaders want. And that's the case of business, the academy, church, nonprofits, for-profits. You can look at the huge success story that is Apple and Steve Jobs' notorious personality of wanting things, too quickly and pushing too hard.
And lost his job.
Yeah. People forget about that part of Apple's story is that he the board let him go because of a bit of his erratic nature. So leaders want change. Leadership, part of leadership is change. I don't like to equate leadership to change because leadership is much more than just change. But most leaders, and in most situations, are change agents because you're taking people to a better place, and that requires them to do some things differently. But you've got to have a lot of patience in the church, and that's part of bringing people along. Is the church is the place where a lot of people don't want things to change because the world changes so rapidly. At least on Sunday and Wednesday, I can go to church and it's the same.
It's my stability in an unstable world. It's my balance in an unbalanced world. It is my hope in what appears to be a hopeless world. I don't want my church to change. I get it.
Yeah, so patience is key. Longer timelines is key. And that's the thing I've learned about being at West Bradenton. I mean, I look back now 9 years in, and granted, we still have several projects in front of us. But, people talk about, like, wow, look at what has happened. This is a success story. And a lot of times people think that it's like this overnight success story, that people on the outside who don't know much and look at it and go, wow, this is great. And you go, no, this took quite some time. And that's the case of entrepreneurs too. If I know this is a podcast on churches, not entrepreneurialism, but everyone, you look at all these overnight successes, and the vast majority of them have been at it for a long time.
The phrase sometimes is gradually and then all of a sudden.
Yes, that's like leading a church. It's gradually and then all of a sudden. We gradually grew, and then all of a sudden people woke up and realized that, wow, we're a whole lot larger than we used to be.
And diverse and younger and a lot of other things.
Yeah, for instance, we just, this last Sunday at the time of this recording, we had our largest non-Easter attendance in my tenure.
Wow.
And you look at it and it didn't feel like all of these people just showed up. It was a big Sunday for us, and we're like, wow, okay, it was a good Sunday. But then you look at the numbers and you go, wait a minute, this is a high water mark for us. And it was one of those things where it didn't even quite feel like a high water mark because gradually, and then all of a sudden, we're as big as we have ever been.
And another reason behind that is your facility sometimes disguised how many people were there because you have a relatively large worship center, but you have chosen to keep 3 services. And so that spreads them out a little bit.
Correct. So our issue is parking. I think some people can relate to this. We can put more people in the building than we can park outside. Yeah. So,
well, tell them to come 10 to a car. That really works.
If we had 10 to a car, if we had 4 or 5 to a car, like they did in the 60s when the campus was being built, then yeah, the inside would match the outside. But as is the case with a lot of established churches, they built a parking lot when you would have 5 and 6 to a car.
Right.
Now we have 2 per car.
Or 1, so, or sometimes a half.
Well, we have not enough parking and too much seating. So that's part of the reason we have 3 services is just so that people can find a parking spot. Not only that, it's not like we've got this one big lot where everyone can see where to go. We've got all these spread out lots. We've got a field lot, a north lot, a south lot, an east lot. And, the east lot, you can't even see when you're pulling up to the church. You kind of have to know where it is. And that's one of our bigger ones. And so it's just a big problem. But with patience and with time, we've been able to solve some of these problems. And we've made that transition from being what many would say would be an older church to one that is probably the youngest in the region. Although it's tough for me to know that for sure.
Well, one of the summary comments I could make over all of your points here, but specifically on this one, there is an implied commitment of long tenure. That doesn't mean that you've stated that you will. It doesn't mean that it will happen. But it's hard to bring about change in an older church unless the leader has a commitment to be there until God says anything different. And I know you've gotten a lot of people who've been interested in you, that want to talk to you about coming to this church, their church institution. And if God opened the door, you'd walk through it. But the thing about it is you haven't, he hasn't, so you haven't. And so the long tenure has stayed.
Yeah, and at this point, I really have no desire to go anywhere else. I guess I could get a calling to go somewhere else, but it's nice to have that stability. In fact, Josh King and I recently talked about how you can the temptation at this stage of my tenure is to cruise because I'm well respected, well loved, even, and quite frankly, could probably just get away with a lot, just because people love me and they know me. And it's hard to actually stay in leadership mode when you have a long tenure and even just a little bit of success. So it is necessary to keep pushing it. So we've got a few more things on the horizon that I think God's going to do in the church. So we'll get there when we get there. But this next point I think is important. Part of making change in an older church, and again, it's not just making change without running over the old guard, without running over the people that have been there for a long time, without running over your elderly people. I had one lady come up to me the other day, and I don't know if she would put herself in the elderly category, but I will. And she said, we have a really young choir now, and they jumping all over the place and dancing and all this stuff, and I get that that's not for everybody, but she's part of it, and she's been with the church for at least 5 decades,
Wow.
maybe 6. And she said, I can't quite jump. I can't quite get my feet off the ground, but I love being up there with those young people. And I'm so glad that you'll have me because, I'm just some old person and, I don't even know if I should be up there. And I looked at her and, I said, your age changes, your value doesn't. Everyone gets older, but your value to the church remains the same. You're just as valuable to our church as you were 50 years ago. So, she is a big supporter. And so, Susan, thank you. I don't think she listens to the show, but Susan's an incredible supporter and has walked with me through a whole lot.
Well, if you want to say something to somebody who listens, that's probably Miss Margaret or your mother.
Yeah, I know Margaret's listening. Hey, Margaret. I know my mom is listening. Hey, Mom.
Absolutely.
So, come on. So I had a one-on-one moment with her, and I think those one-on-one moments are important. So if you want to lead change and if you want to bring people along, one way to show that you care is to give them that one-on-one time. And yes, it does take more time. It does take more meetings. It is more exhausting. But when you sit down with someone or a family over dinner, you take out a local businessman to lunch. These are the times when people go, okay, even if I disagree, I know my pastor cares. I know my pastor is doing this from a genuine place. There's a purity to his leadership. And that will help you out a lot. So what did Kevin Ezell used to say? There wasn't a problem he couldn't resolve over breakfast at Cracker Barrel or something
You
like that.
nailed it. That's exactly what he said. He had the power of one-on-one meetings, and sometimes you may have 2 or 3 there, but the point was still the same. Just talk to them, get to know them, and I think he did that at churches. He's done that in his leadership at the North American Mission Board, and I've listened to that and I've learned a lot from him.
Yeah, and listening that goes with the one-on-one meeting. So there's a power to patience and time. There is a power to one-on-one meetings. And then there's a power to listening. And boy, we often want to just insert ourselves because we know that we know better. And you know what? For a lot of leaders, that's true. It's true that you know better. It's true that you have a better idea of what to do than others because you're in it and you're in it every day and they're not. But when you sit down and when you listen and you actually hear people out, you don't have to make any promises that you'll take their feedback and do something with it. All that you have to do is hear the feedback. 90% of the time, I'll say 9 out of 10 times when somebody needs to express themselves, that's really all they're looking for. They know that what they have to say probably won't change anything. They just want to know that you will actually listen to them. And there is great power in listening. And man, there's a great book called Crucial Conversations.
It is.
And I revert back to that book so much. It's not a Christian book, but I would recommend it for any marriage and any leader. It will help you with your marriage and it will help you with your leadership. And this idea of listening is built into that book. And so if you want some like practical ways of doing that, the book is great. I will point out one thing that I just loved about the book, Crucial Conversations. You should, every time you're in a crucial conversation that could be intense, you always have to keep asking yourself, what do I want out of this? What do I, don't derail your own conversation with attacks and with things that could potentially move you off of what you want to accomplish.
Oh, I did that yesterday. I kept thinking my goal was keep it happy, keep it happy, keep her happy, keep her happy, keep her happy. You know who I was talking to?
My mom.
Yes, exactly. That's my goal. It worked.
So there is also the power of transparency, patience and time, one-on-one meetings, listening, and transparency. And here's the thing. You've heard all of this from us before, but we're putting it all together in a way that you can know that these are the four things, the four really top things that you need to be doing if you want to make change in an older church without running over people. Now, here's the thing. If you want to slash and burn, if you just want to just tell people to get lost, sometimes that's easier. And sometimes you can be more successful in doing that. I don't know that that's the right approach, though. I don't know if running over people is the right way to lead a congregation. So part of this is just expressing to everyone what your intentions are. Don't let people fill in the gap of your motives and your intentions. Tell them, be explicit. This is my intention. This is my motive. And when you're transparent like that way, it really squelches the rumor mill.
Let me do a corollary to the transparency. And we've written about that and talked about it at length. And it's the issue of sincere apologies. When you get it wrong, part of the transparency is saying, I got it wrong and this is why. Transparency isn't just telling them what you're doing right or what you plan to do. Transparency is saying, I was wrong. And that is a huge thing. And that is something that can take you a long way in any relationship. We're talking about longer term members and longer term pastorates in older churches, but any relationship, if you're willing to sincerely apologize. Now, these fake apologies, oh man, they bother me. If I did anything to offend you, dude, why are you even saying that? You're not even claiming that you did anything wrong. So just be quiet. Just shut up. Just stop it. Just stop it right there.
Yeah, the word "if" should never be placed in an apology. If the word "if" is there, it's not a real apology. An apology is I was wrong.
Exactly.
My apologies. So there you go. 4 PowerPoints, if you will, to make change in an older church without running over the old guard. Patience and time, one-on-one meetings, listening well, and being transparent and upfront about intentions and motives, telling people explicitly what your intention is and what your motive is.
And Sam, as we continue to talk about our sponsor, which you'll be talking about, Upward Sports, they've been with us a while. We love them. We love them because they help bring this to fruition. Their sponsorship allows us to do what we do. There's another reason we love them. They really reach the community. They're really making a difference, and they're always on the cutting edge. They're changing, not too fast, but I think at a right pace. And one thing that they're introducing is just right where you are, upward running.
Yeah,
Upward running.
you heard it first here. I might have gotten a little heads up about this launch because they know I am a runner. I think this is going to be their biggest release ever. They do a lot of sports well. And so I know not everyone likes running. I know people like basketball and
Or
soccer.
pickleball now.
Yeah, pickleball. Yeah. All the things. But upward running is something that I am definitely excited to announce. You can bring upward running to your church by hosting a 5K challenge, start a training group. All that you need is like one passionate leader. And I bet that every church has at least one passionate leader that likes to run or jog or walk or hike. So this is a great way to create community in your community through a ministry of the church. But they also have these running communities through the new Run Club app. So there is an app associated with this program. So you might be training for a 5K, a 10K, a marathon.
What's that one you recently ran in the muck?
Yeah, so I do ultra marathons in the wilderness. Yeah, so it was a 50K. I have a 50 miler coming up. In fact, at the time of this air date, I'll have finished my training. And
yeah, by the way, if this date is here and you know that Sam is no longer with the Church Answers, you know that he has pushed himself too far.
I got lost in the woods on my 50-mile run. Yeah. So here's the thing. Here's where you go. Upwardrunning.com. Upwardrunning.com. You can get started there. I absolutely love this idea. This whole community of upward running, I think, is going to be massive. Get in early. Not that you compete with other churches, but it would, first to market might be a good thing in your community.
Well, you need to have a little bit of exclusivity here. Not everybody can do a 5K at one time. Now, they can do them at different times, but not everybody can do them at one time.
I'm just saying there's a benefit to being the first one to do something. So we're kingdom-minded here, of course, and there's room for everybody. But you heard it first here. Go to upwardrunning.com. Well, thank you for tuning in to today's episode of Rainer on Leadership. For those of you who watch on YouTube, you are part of a growing community. We thank you for that. Give us a thumbs up. Comment. We do read the comments, so you can get in there and say whatever you want to say. And if you are listening on your favorite podcasting app, if you haven't subscribe to us, but you can subscribe on YouTube as well. And if you have an opportunity to give us a review, then that would help us as well. So we've got a great episode coming up soon. We'll see you then.